Hey, special educators. Welcome to Teach, Taskbox, Inspire, the podcast dedicated to making your job as a special education teacher easier by making your instruction more fun for you and your students. Inside each episode, you'll learn how to get the most use out of your task boxes in the classroom. I'm your host, Lisa Holliday from Chalkboard Superhero, a veteran special education teacher passionate about empowering you with purposeful teaching strategies, helpful tips and tricks, and other classroom management tools that will help you thrive in your role. Let's get started with today's episode. Hey there, special educators, and welcome back to another episode of Teach, Taskbox, Inspire. I'm your host, Lisa Holliday. In today's episode, it's all about supporting students with Oppositional Defiant Disorder, or ODD. If you've worked with students who have ODD, you know how challenging it can feel at times. These students often display behaviors that can be tough to manage, but with the right tools and strategies, we can help them thrive. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you 10 strategies for supporting students with ODD. Practical, tried and true ideas that you can start right away. Whether you're a teacher, a therapist, or a parent, these strategies will give you some fresh insight. So let's get started. Number 1, consistent, clear expectations and logical consequences. This first strategy is foundational. Students with ODD absolutely thrive when they understand what's expected of them and can predict the consequences of their actions. So I want you to set up clear classroom rules and make sure the students understand them, model them, review them often, and even involve the students in discussions about why these expectations are important. And when it comes to consequences, keep them logical. For example, if a student knocks over their materials, they should clean them up. Simple, connected, logical. Illogical consequences, like missing recess for talking back, can often make things worse. Keep it clear, and students will be more likely to follow through. All right, number 2. Strategy 2 is all about creating behavior plans with a student. Involving students in their own behavior plans can be a game changer. Sit down with the student and talk about what triggers their challenging behaviors, what times of the day do they find the hardest, and what strategies they think would help. By giving them ownership, you increase their buy-in and the likelihood that they're going to stick with the plan. Number 3, personalized calm down corner. So this is not just any corner. It's a personalized one. Students with ODD often struggle with emotional regulation, and having a dedicated space to cool down can help. I want you to try to personalize this space with the things that resonate with that student. If they love Star Wars, add Star Wars themed items. If music calms them, let them listen to some during their break. This makes the space feel safe and welcoming, encouraging the student to use it when they need a break. Number 4, positive reinforcement and behavior-specific praise. We all know that students with ODD often hear more negatives than positives, so we need to counterbalance that by catching them doing the right things. Instead of just saying, "Good job," be specific and say, "I really appreciate how you raised your hand before speaking," or "I loved how you just walked that over to the pencil sharpener." Things like that helps them understand what behaviors you want to see more of and reinforces their efforts in a much clearer way. Number 5, building relationships through trust. Students with ODD can be resistant to authority figures, but they still crave that connection. Building a trusting relationship does take time, but it's essential. Spend time getting to know that student outside of those challenging moments. Ask about their interests, what they enjoy doing, their favorite hobbies. I want you to try to show genuine care, and over time, they will come to trust and respect you. Number 6 is flexibility with control and choices. So students with ODD often struggle with feeling out of control, and this can lead to that defiance. Offer them choices throughout the day, whether it's choosing between 2 assignments, deciding where they want to sit, or picking which activity to do first. When they feel more in control, they're less likely to resist. Giving them demands is like adding fuel to the fire. So if you go over and say, Johnny, it's time to start your work, they are going to rebuke, right? They're going to say, no, not doing it. Not going to do that. If you go over and say, Johnny, you can either start now or in 30 seconds. Or Johnny, do you want to start your work using a pencil or a crayon today? Johnny, do you want to sit under your desk or on top of your desk to get your work done? There are so many endless ways to give more flexibility and control with their choices that it's endless. And sometimes I run out of things to say. I'll say, do you want me to stand over here or do you want me to stand on that side to make sure you're doing your work? So sometimes you're just kind of pulling it out of thin air, but at least you're offering them some control. Those choices give them control. They like to feel like they're the boss. So instead of getting into a power struggle, we want to give them a little bit more control. All right, so number 7 is predictable routines and structure. And I always feel like every podcast I say the same things over and over and over, but this is true for students with ODD. They greatly benefit from predictable routines and clear structure. When they know what to expect throughout their whole day, they feel safer and more in control. So try to establish a consistent schedule, use visual timers, and stick to routines as much as possible. Even small changes can trigger defiance, so prepare them in advance when changes to the routine. If you have a student who doesn't have speech today, you might want to go to them and say, oh, I'm sorry, Miss Jessica's out today, so you won't be going there after lunch. You might also have some strategies that they could do. They're going to get frustrated, right? They're going to be defiant. They might be mad. But these are the times that you want to make sure that you have those strategies in your back pocket to be prepared. I had this one time where a student didn't make a team, and the teacher ended up telling them the very first minute the student walked in the door. And that probably is not the right time to tell a student with ODD that, sorry, you didn't make the team, because that news stuck with the child all day and they had a really rough day for the rest of the day. So when you have those types of news and or changes in their schedule, try to find good times to tell them as well. All right, number 8 is mindfulness and self-regulation tools. So teaching students with ODD to recognize and regulate their emotions is key. Using mindfulness exercises, such as those deep breathing, guided meditations, or simple grounding activities to help them become more aware of their emotions before they escalate. Tools like breathing cards or calming apps can help guide them when they're feeling overwhelmed. So, and I know some of you are like, my kid is not going to be down for deep breathing or guided meditations. But you would be surprised once you show them an app or a YouTube video how interested they are about their feelings and getting their breathing under control. All right, number 9 is breaking tasks into small, manageable steps. So large tasks can really overwhelm students with ODD, which just leads to frustration and that defiant behavior, right? I can't do this, ripping up the paper, throwing things on the floor. You want to try to simplify tasks into smaller chunks and celebrate successes along the way. So if you are giving out a 5-page packet for a math and you're reviewing before a test, maybe just give him the first page. Or say there's 10 problems on the page, maybe you're folding up the page so the student only sees the top third of the page. Maybe you are modifying a test for this student and he or she needs the problems, like one problem per page, because it's just too much to have more than one on one page. And that's fine. We want to make sure that they're not overwhelmed with the things that we're giving them. They have the ability, they just feel overwhelmed with the amount of work that's in front of them. So, for example, if you're doing a writing activity and they have to fill out a graphic organizer and then write a draft and then they have to make a final copy and then they're going to their computer and then there's like this whole rubric, that's a lot. Like, whoa, let's slow down. If you give all of that to the student with ODD, they are going to freak out. you want to walk over and say, okay, the first thing we're going to do is fill out this graphic organizer together. And if you can't do it together, say, I'm going to have you fill out just this part of the graphic organizer and I'll be back to help you. Do you know what I mean? Like, you want to give them really small chunks at a time and then check in where necessary. The last one I'm going to give you is to focus on relationship repair after any behavioral incident. Students with ODD can often feel ashamed or defensive after an outburst. You need to take time to debrief with that student, letting them know it's okay to make mistakes, but also focusing on how to repair the relationship and make things right. This teaches them accountability without the need for punishment and strengthens the bond between the student and the teacher. So repairing those relationships after anything that goes wrong, especially if the behavioral incident results in some kind of in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension, because now they've had a long time to think about what had happened and they feel awful. Well, we hope that they feel awful and they come in and they're ashamed and they're sad and they really want that first connection with you to be kind of, set aside time and kind of talk about what had happened, right? So there you have it, 10 strategies to support students with ODD. It's really all about creating that safe, structured environment, using those logical consequences, and fostering a positive, trusting relationship. Remember, students with ODD want to feel understood and supported, and with the right strategies, we can help them succeed. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode. Until next time, guys, bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Teach, Taskbox, Inspire. I hope you've gained some tips and motivation to fuel your week ahead. If you're ready to explore more strategies for empowering your students as independent learners, be sure to dive into my free training at chalkboardsuperhero.com/training. And don't keep all this knowledge to yourself. Share this episode with your special education teacher friends who could use some motivation and inspiration. One more thing before you go. If you're finding this podcast helpful and want to show support, head to Apple Podcasts and leave your rating and review. Until next time, keep teaching, taskboxing, and inspiring.